believe me if I told you I'm trying to put the pop filter on? The daycare attendant from Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is one of the coolest character designs I've ever seen, which is a hilarious sentence to say out loud, but I mean it. I could talk about that alone for a while, but let's actually talk about their gender because I think it's interesting to think about. So obviously, this character is meant to be perceived as male. That is what the developers intended, and we can say this with confidence for a couple reasons. The most obvious one is the character's voice. Both Sun and Moon are voiced by Kellen Goff, who is not only a guy, but also voices Glam Rock Freddy in the same game, and I think that's the most guy thing you can do with a range like that. Of course, the sound of someone's voice doesn't determine their gender, but this particular point pretty much summarizes how the players are going to perceive this character's gender. The second point that helps us determine that the daycare attendant's intended gender, oh my god, is male, is the fact that in the game files for their assets, such as models and animation, we can see that Sun and Moon's names are Sunman and Moonman respectively. Just to be clear, they are listed with the names Sun and Moon in both captions and the credits, so file names are not their actual names. By the way, yes, I am totally cool with people calling them by the candy name. Even if it wasn't intentional, it's cute as hell to call them by the candy name. I'll talk more about that in a bit. At this point, I think it's safe to say that the daycare attendant is male as both Sun and Moon. But you wanna know what's kinda weird? There's a bunch of things! So let us begin with what's on the surface. All around Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, I'm not saying that aloud again. I'm not getting paid enough for this. At all. I'm not getting paid. The restrooms are separated for men and women, and all the wall art within those restrooms are different based on which gender they're for. For the men's rooms, you usually have Freddy or Monty, and for the women's rooms, you usually have Roxanne or Chica. So it's pretty obvious that you'll find the wall art of specific characters in the restroom that corresponds to their gender. With that in mind, when we go into the restrooms of the daycare, we'll find wall art of Moon in the men's room, and wall art of Sun in the women's room. Now, the conclusion that most people have come to about this is that instead of the restrooms corresponding to the character's gender, in this particular case, it's actually based on their color palette, with blue representing men and red representing women. That's a pretty fair and most likely intended conclusion, but I just think it's odd that that's where the pattern breaks. Why is this the exception? Speaking of characters and their genders, let's talk about Freddy. In the game, Freddy refers to all of his friends by their respective pronouns. He refers to Chica and Roxanne with she, her, and Monty and DJ Music Man with he, him. However, he only refers to the daycare attendant as it. Additionally, he never refers to them as Sun or Moon, you know, their actual names. I think it's really odd, especially considering that Freddy has a very, very long history with this place and these characters, whether they be his bandmates or the friggin' DJ. He always seems to give each one of them the benefit of the doubt and worries about their well-being, but he doesn't show the same attitude towards the daycare attendant. This makes me wonder if the daycare attendant really does go by its pronouns, or if Freddy just really doesn't see them as a person like he sees the other animatronics. If the latter is so, how come? Clearly, Moon is infected with the Afton virus, and Freddy is only familiar with the animatronics prior to this infection. So what makes him view the daycare attendant this way? Does he view Sun the same way he does Moon? I don't know, I just think it's strange for this typically optimistic and forgiving character to sort of flip the switch when it comes to the daycare attendant. You could say that he's creeped out, but I mean, look at TJ.
He is such a nice fellow.
So that's pretty much all we have from the source material that points the daycare attendant's gender in a different direction than what may have been intended. So now let's talk about what the perception of fans has done to it. Very early on, when it comes to the publicity of Security Breach, so like the first few trailers that came out, we could see Moon himself, or as he was known at the time, Moondrop. He earned this name because people believed that the in-game candy adverts were displaying the name of the character, not the candy. I don't blame them either, as apparently the only way you could have heard about the candy prior to this is a collectible from Help Wanted. I think it was Help Wanted. Who cares? I hyperfixated on Security Breach and that's as far as my knowledge goes. Everything else is cloudy as hell. Regardless, as I've said, calling a character by the name of the candy they represent is funny and cute despite the fact that a lot of folks are sour about it. Stay sour. Patch Kids. Back to Moon himself. The given information about him was vague enough at the time that some people had speculations on whether or not he would even be hostile. As we know now, he's the deadliest fucking thing in the game, and Sun is the non-hostile counterpart. But did we even know about Sun back then? Actually, we kinda did. In some of these trailers, you could catch a quick glimpse at the wall art of Sun but it was always quite obscured. This led to a lot of people to think, hey, maybe Sun is the female counterpart of Moon, and a lot of artists actually started drawing her as such. In later trailers, we got a pretty clear shot of Sun doing a really happy big jump, and it overall gave off the impression that she was friendly. But still nothing that was shown pointed to any correction regarding their gender. As far as I'm aware, there was no way that people could have known for absolute certain what Sun was supposed to be until players actually met him for the first time in-game, which is where they first heard his voice. It's no big secret that the release of Security Breach brought in a ton of new fans to the FNAF community, so a lot of newcomers never actually got to have that previously constructed notion that Sun could have been a woman. So when they eventually discovered all of the older art depicting her as such, they got a little bit confused. Of course, the vast majority of this has already been brushed off as exactly what it is. That's just what some people thought could have been the case at the time. But it does tell us a couple things about Sun himself that we might not have realized if the idea was never challenged in such a way. Number 1, his design is actually quite androgynous. He has these big eyelashes, these big puffy pants, and you could call that a skirt if you wanted, but for the love of God, look at how he walks, which is also incredibly fast and incredibly gay, and if you can't see that, I don't know what to tell you. Number 2, literally the only thing in terms of game presentation, meaning disregarding the file names that I mentioned earlier, that's leading us to believe that Sun is a man is his voice. That's it. There's nothing else accessible in the game that explicitly states the gender of either Sun or Moon. I even checked those messages that you can get from those duffel bags, and there isn't even anything in there. Trust me, I've combed the desert.
We ain't found shit!
Oh, by the way, while I'm talking about the duffel bag messages, yes, they also refer to the main cast of the animatronics with their correct pronouns. Figured I should mention that. The fandom also has a rather ongoing debate as to whether or not Sun and Moon are the same person, or even the same animatronic. Usually if they're ever shown as separate animatronics, it's for the artist's own storytelling purposes for the sake of their own work rather than what they believe is canon. There's 90% of the time going to be a disclaimer, and a very, very panicked disclaimer. As for the connection between the two characters, most people see them as co-workers, sometimes brothers, or even lovers, but a few people also theorize that they might be the same person, as in the same character, just appearing in a different form based on whether or not the lights are on. Now, all of that is up for debate, and has not been solidified in canon, and knowing how FNAF tends to be, it won't surprise me if it never is. But let's take that last idea of them being the same character and run with it for a bit. 'Cause I'm sneaky. We know that in canon that both Sun and Moon are supposed to be seen as male, but let's imagine for a second that the notions regarding Sun being a woman before the release of Security Breach were true. That means that we'd have a character that presents themselves as both female and male separately, but their presentation would be dictated by the activity of the lights. Kinda relatable in real life. Except instead of lights, you got people. So with all that being said, and with all the information that we have, what does this all mean?
I'll tell you. I don't know.
Yeah, there's really no solid conclusion that we can come to about all of this, except Sun is male and some people thought he was female. Then again, if Sun was supposed to be presented as male, why is everything surrounding the daycare attendant's gender so vague? Why doesn't Freddy say he when talking about Moon like he does with everyone else who identifies as such? How come he never mentions them by name? Though we still have a lot of unanswered questions, I actually kinda like the ambiguity surrounding the daycare attendant. When you have a character like this who has a lot of open space in terms of what can be said about their origins and identity, it gives fans a lot of room for creativity and ideas that they can try out without the heavier influence from the source material. This is why I really like characters like Ryuki from Pokemon, who I'm also making a video about regarding his gender, and if you can't tell by now, I think too much. But unlike Ryuki, the daycare attendant is actually a really popular character, and it proves that they don't need a lot of screen time to be appreciated, and for ideas to be created about them, so I'm thankful for that. Still, don't you think them being gender fluid would be kinda cool? I think it's safe to say we can add that to the unofficial list of fan interpretations of Sun and Moon. It's not as common as the others, but hey, maybe we'll get to see this around in the future. Until then, stay weird, you freaky little celestial jester. Spill your secrets to no one. Keep your mouth shut. You're doing a great job! You're doing a great... I'm sorry.